Greetings and thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Angela DeRay. I am the Director of Delta Prevention. And this presentation we really created it with one sort of goal in mind to join you in supporting families, real families, busy lives. We know that's who you are, that you all have busy lives. You're folks that either have families at home that you're working with, your own kids, other kids you're supporting, other families you're supporting. But it also could be that you're someone who just really loves and cares about families and supports them in other ways. So many days that our families have are complicated, and we have kids who are growing up in a world that moves really fast. So I'm going to walk you through how to prevent youth substance use, what you do when you see early signs, how to support a young person who may be already using. No shame, no judgment here, just information, some compassion, and tools that you could use right away. So everything that I share today is grounded in research, it's grounded in prevention science, and really many, many years of walking through and walking alongside some families who are doing their very best. And something I'd like to say up front, you don't have to be a perfect parent. None of us are. We have, my husband and I have raised 8 kids together. They're all grown, moved out. But you don't have to be a perfect parent to make a powerful difference. Your presence matters more than perfection. I've created this document for you. It is the Nurturing Resilient Families resource packet. This presentation is not intended to be exhaustive. It really is just intended to be kind of a quick overview. The resource packet is for you so that you can take this wherever you go, working with other families, using it with your own family. If you're an organization or an agency, you can update it to include information locally, maybe local agencies that can help families. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we're going through. If you're watching this presentation in person, hopefully you have these packets provided for you. But if not, I'm sure whoever you're watching it with will provide a link to them. If you're watching this online, you can also get a link to this on our deltaprevention.org website, as well as in the show notes from this presentation. So I want to talk about this slide. Connection is the most effective prevention strategy we have. I know it's something that when we're looking at how to prevent youth drug use or how to promote health amongst our kids, mental health, physical health, helping them to get to their adult lives with fewer problems than we're seeing in our communities right now. I know that we want sort of this fancy matrix and, a framework of ideas, but really connection is the most effective prevention strategy that we have. It's the foundation of everything we're talking about. When kids feel connected to us, our own kids, other kids, our grandkids, when they feel connected to us relationally, emotionally, day to day, their risk for substance use actually drops dramatically. And that's really important because we are not told that in our culture. We're told that our, older and, kind of middle school teens and then into their older years, that they separate from their parenting adults. They're developmentally, they're pulling away, and those things happen. Of course they do. Naturally speaking, that happens. That is natural. But sometimes if we continuously give ourselves these messages that our teens, our tweens and teens are going to pull away, then what it does is it means that we as parenting adults, as caregivers, we sort of go with the flow and say, oh, okay, well, I guess since that's natural, we'll let that happen. And so then we allow that pulling away in a way that can be very dangerous for our kids. And so we know that if they're connected, then their risk for substance use drops dramatically. So how do you get connected? Well, connected isn't about a bunch of long speeches or, kind of the 24/7 with them at all times. it's really the everyday moments. It's continuing to laugh together, to notice when they seem stressed, to ask about their day, to be present even when there are short conversations. One of the things I love to talk about in terms of being present is that sometimes we think of being present as like face to face conversations, but being present could be just sitting next to them, watching them while they're doing, say, a video game or listening to music or whatever those are. It is literally us being our presence being a present to them and to our family. And I know, I mean, I said in the beginning, we're busy, we're full, our lives are very full. But the truth is that research from the Search Institute, from Strengthening Families, from Prevention Science, it shows us again and again and again that healthy, connected parent-child relationships are the strongest protection that we have for our kids. So just take a moment, if you would. And if you're in a group and you want to pause and have this discussion, absolutely feel free to do it. You can pause the video if you just want to consider this for yourself, or maybe jot down some ideas. One of the things that's great about having a little workbook is that you can actually, just kind of flip to a page, an empty page, or a page with some questions. Just jot down. Here's the question for you: what is one small way that you already connect with your kids? Whether they're kids, tweens, teens, what's a small way you already do it? So think simple but meaningful. Go ahead and take a moment to think that through or to jot that down. So, I mentioned that this presentation is designed for parents, for caregivers, really for anyone who cares about the well-being of young people. You might be here because you are a parent and you're thinking, gosh, how do I connect a little bit more? Or maybe you're here because you think we're starting to see some challenges and I want to make sure that we do what we can in order to shield our kids or to ward off any other bigger challenges. We don't want to continue down this road. Maybe you're a youth worker or volunteer and you are using this to work with families, but whoever you are, however you got here, you're in the right place. Every single tool we talk about today can be adapted for younger kids, for our tweens, for teens, for families with different routines, different cultural backgrounds and needs. Here's a question for you. Think of one young person in your life. Could be a grandchild, your child, it could be a niece or a nephew. Incredibly important that we stay connected even in their lives. Could be a student that you work with. And this person, you hope they stay safe and supported. What I'd like you to do is hold them in your mind and in your heart as we go through this presentation so that you can really see what it feels like to move through the process of doing prevention with this young person, to put those things in place. So here's where we're headed today. We're going to talk about strengthening family connection, what prevention actually is. We're going to talk about spotting early concerns and knowing where to turn for help. I don't want to overwhelm you. We're definitely not going to bring shame here. This is a presentation done without fear. We're just going to give you a little clarity, and I'm going to give you some real tools. So just a quick reflection question together. Which of these areas feels most important for your community right now or for your family right now? Good job, everyone. So, we're going to ground ourselves in a few goals for today. The first thing we'll talk about is how do you strengthen that connection? Now, obviously, there are a lot of things that families can do. This is a very brief overview. At Delta Prevention, we actually do a lot of work around strengthening family connections, working with families to help families understand what the specific tools are that families can use in order to do the kind of work that they want to do in their families. Same thing about communities. We work in coalition and conjunction with other community partners to make this happen. But today we're going to talk about how do you strengthen the connection? How do you understand what early prevention is? What does it look like when young people typically begin experimenting and what we can do early? By the way, we talk a lot about drug prevention at Delta Prevention. It is our mission. A lot of people really are concerned about that. But youth mental health is a very important topic. It's something that when we're working on things, when we're working on prevention in our work, when you're working on it in your families, when you're helping to raise kids up to a healthy adulthood, what you're really doing is you're trying to avoid many problems that young people may end up with into their adult lives, many challenges that you as a family might face. And so a lot of the things that we talk about in prevention really are across the board. How do we get those kids in a resilient way to get into their healthy adulthood and do it in a way that they stay connected and supportive? Then, of course, the last two things we'll talk about is what do you do if you're starting to see early signs? What are some of those subtle changes that can signal stress or risk? And what resources are available for you when that happens? None of us should have to do this alone. I'm telling you, we've experienced all the things that I'm going to talk about today in some way, shape, or form. You can't avoid it with 8 kids who live in the world that we live in today. And by the way, there are some amazing things about the world we live in. And most kids are never going to engage in risky behaviors. Most kids are going to get to their adult lives into and up through their adult lives in a perfectly healthy way. Most families are going to do just fine. And in some ways, are going to trip into some really great outcomes for their families. And so for you, this just might be just kind of polishing things up a little bit, or just a reflection of, are we doing what we could do? Maybe for you, this is, how could I get my kids to do their homework more or stop arguing with each other? And so all of these things work to support all of those goals. But not all of us make it through this, raising our kids, these raising our kids years without some serious challenges. And that's why I want to make this a safe place for us to be able to talk about those things. It's important to do early prevention. And I think a lot of times as adults, we don't think about that. It's not something that we consider. And as parenting adults and as communities, we often already have many of these healthy things built in to our families or our communities. But many parents are shocked to learn how early experimentation can begin. In today's environment, exposure can happen as early as 5th or 6th grade. Could be at school, could be at the park, it could be with other friends. It could be in the most healthy and innocuous place we ever would imagine. Could be at a scout trip. It could be at any of these summer camp. It could be any of those places. Certainly, it's on social media. Certainly, it's on their cell phones. Could be with strangers on the internet. There's so many places. And so prevention becomes so important when access and experimentation is something that happens at much earlier ages than we initially thought, especially as parents had no idea that kids were starting that young. But it doesn't mean that kids are doomed or that we have to panic. What it does mean is that early age appropriate conversations, connection can make a much, much bigger difference than we ever thought. By the way, talking early does not plant ideas in their head. The research is clear that it actually lowers risk because kids feel prepared. It doesn't make them feel more curious. It makes them feel more prepared. There's a great website that I love called drugfree.org. They have some amazing parent guides, friends, drugfree.org. Amazing parent guides to help you have those conversations, what they would look like. And how to have those conversations. Of course, vaping is one of the biggest shifts we've seen in youth behavior in recent years. Nicotine and THC vapes, they're small, they're easy to hide, they're often flavored in a way that makes them appealing. Here's the interesting thing, friends. Many parents think, well, everyone vapes, or many kids, or most kids vape. But the truth is, most kids do not. And that is encouraging. It means that healthy norms are still strong. But vapes also deliver really high concentration of nicotine or THC very quickly, which can increase addiction risk, and it can affect their emotional regulation, their attention, their anxiety. It can also affect their school performance, their relationship, their friendships, their family life. So, um, because they're exposed much younger than we were and with products that were much more potent, it's important for us to really think through how we're going to handle those conversations. Here's a good website, cdc.gov/tobacco, cdc.gov/tobacco. And again, you have all of those in your book and also in all the other places that I mentioned. You would be able to access not only our handouts, but also our links. Here's a quick question for you. So certainly pause if you're doing this in a group. Otherwise, here's a good question for you to consider. How many parents in your community might know what a THC vape looks like? How many parents do you think in your community might know what a THC vape might look like? It's a good question, something to think about. The other really great thing is that our kids can be surrounded by protection. There are these three great areas that we talk a lot about in family programming: bonding, boundaries, monitoring. That's really the backbone of almost every effective prevention program. Bonding builds trust, right? It's that one-on-one time you spend with your kids. By the way, absolutely into their teen years. It's also that time that the time that you spend as a family. It's the small things. It's having those the game nights and the activities and the holidays, all the traditions. Those things build trust between kids and parenting adults. And I do know it gets harder as they get into their teen years because their schedules change. They kind of roll their eyes more. They don't want to do those things. And it's okay for us to shift them a little bit, to change them a little bit, to make it so that they better fit their schedules or are more palatable. But the truth is that those things are still really important. And so you want to make sure to continue to do those things, whatever you have normally done, change it a little bit, adjust it a little bit, do what works for your family, but don't forget that bonding. The next piece, of course, is boundaries, setting boundaries. What are the rules in our family, including discussions about drug and alcohol use? Set realistic boundaries. Make sure kids know you have strong, firm rules. Don't make them wishy-washy. I know that as parenting adults, you might say, oh, but kids are going to try them. What do I do if they decide that they're going to try them? Well, you set clear, firm rules. Research tells us that when clear, firm rules are in place, they're far less likely. If they believe that the rule is not to use, they're far less likely to actually use or to do the other risky behaviors. This is a rule setting time, a discussion time, a time to talk about consequences. And then finally, monitoring, checking in with them, making sure we've said what the rules are. We've talked about what's going to happen if you break those rules, and that we're checking on you to make sure. We love this saying, trust but verify. So our young people are still developing. Their brains are still developing. Their risk taking is still developing. And so it's really important, especially because the part of their brain that is what we call the seat of reason, the part that says, don't do that. That is dangerous. That is not something that you want to do. That part of the brain it's a bit quieter. And that more risk-taking part of their brain during those developmental years is much louder. And so we have to be able to monitor, to set up what is it that we want for them as standards, and then monitor to make sure that they're staying safe and staying within those standards. And so those are really the backbone. We don't want to just know where they are in monitoring, friends. We want to know how they are. We also want to include watching their heart, their emotions, their stress, their coping skills. And it gets tougher, admittedly, in those teen years. But we have to be able to work on creating those relationships that will help them to navigate um, and walk through those tough years. There's a great website called strengtheningfamilieslessons.org. Strengtheningfamilieslessons.org. That website will get you a program. It's just a few dollars. You can actually get on and do it online as a family. Many communities have the program or the classes in person. You can do it virtually. We actually do them virtually at deltaprevention.org, where you and your teen or children or teens can join the class and do it virtually. But that gives you a great starting place for doing all three: bonding, boundaries, and monitoring. We'll just take a brief look at each one. Bonding is kind of that regular shared time that you would have. It's very specific, by the way, research proven behaviors. A lot of times people will say to us, but my child knows I love them, so we're very bonded. But we're really thinking through what are those research proven behaviors that help children feel loved, safe, emotionally connected. And that connection then becomes a powerful protective factor against substance use. In particular, in those risky years, we don't want this just to be emotional fluff. This really is strengthening that cerebral cortex, the brain's thinking center. It downshifts that fight or flight response. I mean, we're really doing the things that help them navigate some of those thoughts, emotions, feeling. Bonding grows in those sort of simple, consistent ways: positive attention, noticing and complimenting the good, one-on-one, or what we call my time, one parent, one child, every day, 10 minutes. The child leads, the parent follows. This is true all the way through the teen years as well, friends. And that strengtheningfamilieslessons.org site can help you with that. And of course, deltaprevention.org, which is our website. Shared experiences, predictable routines. This tells them you matter, you belong. I'm interested in you. I'm focused on you. One of the things that I love in that series is how love is expressed through time, attention, tone, noticing their good behavior. It's so important. It really helps to reduce those conflict, disconnection, risk factors, negative communication patterns. But it's practiced, friends. It's practiced. All right. The next one, of course, is setting boundaries. These are those clear expectations. So when we move into those boundaries in the Strengthening Families program, we're really talking about like structure kids need. And this is true in many parenting for prevention programs. You're looking at like, what do kids need in order to thrive? And structure, boundaries are not about control. They're really about clarity. It's about saying to them, here's safety, here's predictability. A lot of kids who engage in risk taking don't do it because they want to rebel, but in some ways they're thinking about what the expectations are around them and how they're really inconsistent or they're unclear. Do you know most kids, when asked what the rules are about drugs and alcohol, say that their parenting adults, their parents and other parenting adults have not even discussed with them what the rules are around them? And so those rules, that predictability, that's just one area. It's very hard for them to connect to a constantly shifting or moving target. They do better when the world makes sense. And so you want to have a few clear rules that are tied to the values you have in your family. If you're married or have a partner, sit with them first. What should our rules be in these different areas? And have just a few rules. There's a great handout in here that will actually help you to start to do it, to start to think through what those rules are. There's a lot of really great ways to think about that. You can also look through what are the things that work for you and your family. And again, deltaprevention.org, you can get lots of information there. And then strengtheningfamilieslessons.org. I love that. The last thing that I want to just mention is that our young people don't love that their chores, they're participating in helping to take care of the pets and the home and making the meals and taking care of the family. The more they have responsibilities in the family, they're age appropriate and ones that they can do. That if we teach them and train them how to do them, and then we have clear expectations around them, they actually feel more connected to the family. And that helps with consistency. So I know you parents would love to hear that. Here's a question for you. Just thinking about and reflecting on your boundaries. What is one boundary that you could make clearer or more consistent this week? It's a good home practice for you. And you can pause and discuss this if you'd like. Just one. What would it be? Would it be bedtime? Would it be like screen time, chores? Do you have expectations around communication that you could strengthen? So think about what one might be this week. Just make it small, make it achievable. And then this week, I'd like you to practice doing that. Have a discussion about it, and then communicate that in your family. And then finally, I mentioned monitoring already. Just want to remind you that when we talk about monitoring, what we're talking about is a lot more than tracking behavior. What you're doing is you're knowing the practical details of their world, where they are, who they're with. Are they in a safe place? If they're at a friend's house, does that other parent or the other parents in that home, do they believe it's okay to allow kids to drink as long as they're home, or engage in other risky behaviors? Or are they on board with you, with your values around kids and teens not drinking or engaging in other risky behaviors? It matters because monitoring is one of the strongest predictors of preventing substance use. Kids who feel noticed, known, emotionally checked in on are far less likely to seek escape. They're far less likely to engage in risky behaviors. And so what monitoring communicates to them is, you matter to me, I see you, and I'm with you. And friends, if you're internally rolling your eyes or groaning at this because you think, well, my kid is constantly telling me they don't want my time and attention, then that's exactly why it's important for us to be able to give them that time and attention. And we just are going to have to press through. So, of course, last thing I'll just say, I mentioned the Strengthening Families online. Sorry, it's strengtheningfamilieslessons.org. Also, the Keep Connected Search Institute, which you also have access to these links, is keepconnected.searchinstitute.org. And then on their website, they have Strengthen Your Family Relationships links, and you can go in there and get lots of different supportive program documents to help you do this. I have no question for you right now. If you are in a local meeting and you have questions you'd like to ask one another, your local facilitator will ask you a question here. Otherwise, friends, we'll move on to the rest of the presentation. Great place to pause and jot down some notes for yourself as a family. This, of course, is what we're always thinking in terms of, what do I do if there are concerns? I'm going to take a few moments here and offer you some ideas. I want to clear up a few common myths. I want to give you some resources, but let me first just say, we talk about clearing up myths because myths create blind spots. So, friends, I'm saying this to you. not only as a preventionist, but I'm saying this to you as a parent. I'm saying this to you as someone who has lived through several of the things we'll talk about. And I'll also say this to you as really, I will say this to you as though I were telling my best friend. Some of the things that we believe create blind spots in us. So, for example, my kid would tell me if something was wrong. Teens don't always tell us when something is wrong. Or I already mentioned everyone does not vape. A lot of kids think everyone does. The percentage of young people who vape is actually very low compared to what we believe. It is our misconception that most kids are vaping. And then finally, talking about drugs puts ideas in their head. Evidence shows that's not true, that the opposite is actually true. Early, calm, consistent conversations actually can reduce risk. Again, that drugfree.org has a ton of great resources, in particular on how to talk to your kids about drugs. All right, friends, what happens if there are early signs? And this is where your resource packet is really going to come in. There's lots of questions. There's some good family resource sheets on bonding boundaries monitoring. There's some great conversation starters here, friends. So what happens? What do you do if you start to see those early signs? And a lot of times, friends, they're usually quiet. They really kind of whisper before they shout. So we always think as parents and parenting adults, we imagine that substance use begins with dramatic changes. But the truth is the earliest signs are almost always subtle. They're almost always emotional. So you might notice like a shift in mood and you'd say to yourself, well, of course there's a shift in mood. They're in their teen years or their tween years. You might notice changes in their sleep habits, or maybe they're pulling away from old friends, right? It could be that they had these great activities that they used to do, and now they're like, I don't want to do that anymore. And so part of you is like, some of that is natural, but it is one of those, I always think about like that check you get in your gut. Some of that is like, pay attention here. Because even if it wasn't use, they're still struggling. And so we want to get that connection stronger so that we can connect in a way that will help them. And I know as I'm saying this, some of you are like, my kid yells at me every time I try and connect. We absolutely have to persist. Get additional help. Go and do, if it's just the beginning, or if we're just starting to feel it, go and do some of the activities in the Strengthening Families Lessons.org website. Go to the deltaprevention.org. We have tons of resources on there. You can go to drugfree.org. Go to these places that have good resources. If you see them doing, if they're more irritable or shutting down, they're not proof of substance use. They're emotional cues. But we want you to pay attention to the signals. That's what early noticing is. It's connection in action. And so, of course, one of our biggest fears as parents and parenting adults is that we misinterpret these signs. That's understandable. But I want you to be grounded in this truth. Those changes can mean lots of things. Your pediatrician would tell you that there are maybe physical even or emotional things. And most of these are not substance use, because I mentioned that most kids aren't using. They could be responding to like, oh my gosh, overwhelm at school or anxiety, depression. Think about what it's like to be a teen or a tween growing up. Could be a conflict in friendship, could be academic pressure, could be changes to their hormone, or they're experiencing different development in their body. Yes, it could also be early experimentation. The point is, we don't want you to jump to conclusions, but we want you to think through staying connected, keeping communication open, and check in before that assumption grows. Treat it curiously instead of kind of pointed blame. This is the number one question parents ask. What do I say? And the key is just to speak from calm curiosity, not fear, not accusation, not what's wrong with you, because they're going to shut down if they feel judged. They'll open up when they feel understood. So a helpful approach might be like sit down at a peaceful time, not mid conflict, right? Sit shoulder to shoulder, not face to face. We're not interrogating them. Use observational language. Describe what you notice. There's lots of great conversation starters in the book, right? I've noticed a few changes, or how are things going with friends, or I'm here if you need to talk. What you're doing is you're giving them your calm, steady presence. I'm here. I'm safe. I'm steady. That alone is prevention, friends. And here are the conversation starters written out, but these phrases aren't magic, friends. They just open the door gently. You're just saying to them, I care about how you're feeling. I see you. You seem stressed lately. Do you want to talk? We're not trying to get you in trouble. Nothing you say is, I'm not trying to take what you say and turn. I just want to understand. They're powerful because what you're saying to them is, I'm on your team. I'm not coming after you. They're more likely to talk if they feel a partnership instead of a punishment. Okay, what happens if the behavior escalates or if they're withdrawing more and more? That's when we pull in support. We want to get as early as we can. Support doesn't mean something is wrong or wrong with them. It means that they deserve a trusted adult who can help them navigate whatever that emotional load is they're carrying. So it might look like a school counselor or pediatrician, might look like a coach, a family coach, or maybe a coach from sports, maybe a sport that they're in, might be some kind of a local program that is in the area. It could be a therapist. It might be someone who is brief intervention, right? It could be a brief intervention specialist. It could be somebody who's trained in screening. You might ask the school for help. Asking for help, friends, is prevention. Asking for help. Do not sit in your, I don't want to ask because I'm concerned that people will think I'm a bad parent or that my kid, there's something wrong with my kid. Find a trusted adult that you feel comfortable asking and bringing into the situation, and then ask for help with your child. Don't just think that it will go away, okay? Because at this point, you're starting to really be concerned. The Partnership to End Addiction, which is drugfree.org, I absolutely love them. It's one of the strongest national resources for parents. They got a lot of research that you can see on their website. They speak with compassion, clarity. They have a helpline. They have email support, text support. So if you're really feeling it, friends, you can actually get one-on-one parent coaching there. They have great conversation guides, what to say scripts. I really want you, and then if you need it, they even have, friends, treatment navigation. Okay, so you never have to walk this road alone. It is one of my favorite resources to point families to. Again, we're at that question slide. So if you're in a local group, friends, this is a time to pause. Your local facilitator will ask you a question. For the rest of us, let's keep moving forward. All right, we're at that place nobody wants to be at. What do you do when you know use is happening? We're going to take a deep breath right now because this is really hard. This is the moment that you realize that your child's been using, and it is usually, friends, I've been there. It's usually filled with fear and guilt and self-blame. So here's the truth that you deserve to hear. Your kid's not broken. You didn't cause it. You're not powerless. Okay? So kids are going to use, kids and teens are going to use for reasons: stress, pressure, anxiety, depression, trauma, all kinds of stuff. They belonging, coping. Our goal now as parents and parenting adults is not to shame. We've got to anchor. Connection is still the most important intervention that you have. You may need to find a friend. You may need to find your own trusted person, because they need from you right now calm presence, not panic. They need just steady. Okay? So you're going to have to get steady here. You're Probably going to need multiple layers of support, and that's good because they are available. Not every child is going to need intensive treatment, okay? So some of the options are going to include early intervention, just brief structured support for early use. They might need outpatient counseling, could be weekly therapeutic support. Some families, yes, friends, are going to need either an intensive outpatient, several sessions a week, or perhaps even residential treatment. Now, here's the encouraging research. Family involvement at any level dramatically increases success. So kids are going to do better when their caregivers stay engaged, when they stay compassionate, when they stay consistent. You, friends, are part of the treatment. You're part of the solution. You are not separate from it. Family involvement is one of the strongest predictors of positive outcomes. So what do? Well, safety planning. Very first thing, it's really about helping every individual family create a calm, structured environment while they're figuring out the next step. So it's not about punishment. It's really just about reducing the harm that could be happening in your family and increasing connection. So a few things that will help, obviously, secure alcohol, medications, substances at home when they're experimenting, struggling. By the way, this is a great preventative method. Any kinds of medications or alcohol, different substances, to secure them in a secure location. Okay. Access absolutely matters, whether we're talking about prevention, intervention, or treatment. Access absolutely matters. We want you to lock up whatever alcohol, cannabis, paraphernalia, prescription meds, especially pain meds, ADHD meds, those kind of things, anything that could be misused. It's not about distrust, friends. It's about buying time for healing and preventing impulsive use. So even small steps like cabinet locks, medication lockbox, they can make a huge difference. There's a great resource website. It's called safemedicationuse.ca. So www.safemedicationuse.ca. That is a great place for you to get lots of information on, give you some medication lockbox ideas and safety tips. Let's pause for a minute here. This is a hard one. This is, friends, this right here, we're right in the thick of it here. So I want to pause for a reflection question for you. Where, if you're working in your community, where in your community do you think families need more support, or what type of support do you think families in your community need with things like safe storage, whether we're talking prevention, intervention, or treatment and recovery? And in your home, where do you need more support with safe storage? Take a moment to have that discussion, friends, or jot down some responses so you can consider those as we're walking through. A couple of notes here. This is something that is going to make a huge difference in our families. So I want to give you one or two more, just a couple more resources. And again, you have access to all of these, but I mentioned drugfree.org, my favorite website to work on this. Here's another one, findtreatment.gov, findtreatment.gov. Okay, that's another one that is new, findtreatment.gov. And that can also help you with safety and prevention. Okay, there are situations where quick action is necessary. So if a child shows signs of overdose, severe impairment, or severe panic attacks, any kind of suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, if they're discussing that, if there's confusion, loss of consciousness, if there's a dangerous reaction, friends, to any kind of a substance, we're going to move quickly and immediately to safety. Quickly and immediately to safety. I want this to be your mental, and even if you have to print it out for yourself, support list. Quickly and immediately to safety. So of course, 911 always. That certainly is where you can get immediate help. However, maybe it's not that type of immediate help. You can also get 988, which is our suicide and mental health crisis support. So if they are having conversations about harming themselves or suicide or any of those things, 988. I want to offer you poison control. And I offer this from a place of some of you might be like, gosh, it's an emergency. Why would I call poison control? I'm speaking to the parent who would be afraid to call 988 or 911. You're the parent who might say, but Angela, I don't want them to think anything's wrong with my family. I'm going to give you no judgment here, friends. If our children are in an emergency situation, 911. If you think, well, my child needs suicide, we think that there might be some challenges with suicidal ideation, or they're talking about harming themselves, 911 or 988, right? Okay. But you might be just like, I'm not sure if it warrants that. You can call poison control. They can give you immediate guidance for ingestion, for exposure. Maybe you have a younger child that ate like a gummy or some other kind of edible. So they always can be called, okay? And then, of course, I've mentioned drugfree.org and findtreatment.gov. And really, the big thing you need to tell yourself is we have a ton of resources, and that there is no shame, friends, no shame. You have to push that away, okay? I know you're angry. I know you're frustrated. I know you're scared. I know. But I want you to know that help is available, okay? All right. Let me just wrap it up with this. A few key takeaways. I want to anchor this entire thing in hope. I want you to understand that prevention is powerful. The small daily things matter more than you think they do. That support exists at every stage, okay? That you never have to wait until things are bad enough. That you're protecting your child every time you show up with love, curiosity, presence, okay? And that early concerns are opportunities, big, big, big gifts. You don't even realize how much of a gift an early concern that is addressed is, because you can avoid so many other challenges. Early concerns are not failures. They're not pending disaster. They're just an opportunity for us to figure out, how do we get back on track? I want to pause here and reflect. What's one insight you're going to carry forward from today? One insight. Are you going to have a conversation, a 5-minute check-in, one curious question? Are you going to use one reinforcing compliment, tell them they did something fantastic? Are you going to review your expectations as a family? Are you going to download the tool? Are you going to make a call? Are you going to get on drugfree.org? What are you going to do today? Something that will make a big difference in your family. All right. So you can download the family resource sheet, the conversation starters. You can download the prevention checklist. You've also got this in here, the when to seek help guide. You can get access to all of the resources. It's on your document, the last page on your document. Oops, that's this end. It also has, friends, it has lots of other resources that I didn't even discuss. It talks about going to childmind.org for anxiety, depression, trauma, that type of thing. Talks about how you can actually use some of the resources on teens.drugabuse.gov. Or you can also make a call to your pediatrician. So many ways, friends, that you can utilize wherever you are on this journey.